What is up, everyone? As I always say, let's go. I almost said something else. But man, today was Thursday. Today was awesome. So hopefully everyone out there that's checking this out live or on the replay, whatever it is, hopefully you had an awesome Thursday also. So today started a 3-day journey with some investment in myself. Investment in my mind. And so that would be the thing that I would ask you as an individual is what are you doing right now to invest in your most valuable asset? And that asset is your mind, your mindset. And it's one of those things that people will look at an opportunity when it comes to training, when it comes to maybe a seminar, when it comes to a speech, that they'll look at it as an expense. And so when you look at things as an expense, you miss out on the possibility of the expansion taking place, the possibility of what's going to impact your life and make change for you. The biggest thing, though, is as you're going through those different steps, whatever it is for you, you've got to take the information and put action behind it. Because we always hear it, knowledge is power, and that is the wrong way to look at it. We look at knowledge is power to keep people locked up, and it really has people that are like, well, let me get all this knowledge. It's like, okay, you got all that knowledge, but what are you doing with it? What are you putting forth behind it? What action are you taking? And so I have to laugh because today I got a call from Patrick, and he's like, are you ready to go? He's like, let's go. I was like, all right, what happened? And so just hearing and seeing the things that are happening behind the scenes with Two Native Sons, I was like, yeah, 3 weeks ago we were talking about this, and now just it is rapidly expanding, growing, and it's powerful to see an idea, a concept, a talk start to take life. And so that's the Two Native Sons, the logo that we revealed last night, which is behind me on the screen. It's a beautiful thing to see something that you're like, hey, let's do it this way. And it comes to life and you're like, oh, here we go. And just the support and the enthusiasm that we're seeing from other people, it's huge because it shows proofs in the pudding that when you go and do something and you speak it into existence, when you speak things into what will happen, it's a beautiful thing. And so you've just got to be mindful about how you're speaking on things, what you're saying, and just understand that words are very powerful. Thoughts are very powerful. And I brought this up quite a few different times. Thoughts lead to feelings. Feelings lead to actions. Actions lead to results. And so the thoughts that we had created a feeling of enthusiasm, which led to the actions of shit, start taking the steps forward, start swinging the bat. We have the how and the why, the what's coming along as we're building it. So it's we're just we're going. And so things that are popping up is like, okay, time, whatever, here we go. So it's like we ain't holding back. But today, the 3-day convention that I'm going through, virtual, beautiful thing. It's one of those things that there are things that are spoken, and then the book that I highly recommend people go and read and take a deep dive into, The Buddha and the Badass. Things are showing up there, and you're like, seeing things twice in one day. Yeah, there's something there. And so a couple things that really resonated from the training today, and it was powerful because it was people from all these different industries, different businesses, whatnot, coming together. And it was more the mindset piece, the focus piece, and talking about things that normally aren't talked about. So the one first thing that was talked about that really hit me heavy was the biggest room that needs to be within your control is the room for improvement. And so that's the biggest room, the room for improvement. So what are you doing with that room? How are you expanding that? What are you doing to improve? it's a good question. It's something to think about. And so they had spoken that, you got to be vulnerable. You got to show up, and you have a message that somebody else needs to hear. And to hear the story from this individual, he had talked about he was estranged with his father, and listened to this talk, and it was for building business. But what really came to him was it wasn't building the business, it was going and mending this relationship with his father. And to see what happened when he went and mended that relationship, what it opened up for him as an individual, it was powerful. And to hear that story, it was one that really touched my heart. And then he was explaining that he was invited to go talk to some real estate agents, I believe, and he's the only non-real estate agent there. And he shared this story, and the individual that invited him to speak is like, did you read something? Did I tell you something? And this gentleman was estranged with his father, and a week before his dad passed away. And the individual that shared his story with his dad and the change that took place, he's like, imagine if I could have shared this story 2 weeks before, what that would have done for that individual. And so that right there really resonated, because we all have a message. We all have a story, and it's about being vulnerable. It's about being transparent. It's about being real and unscripted. And that's stuff that Patrick and I are real big on, because too many people have this script that they're living by. They try to go out and live by the script and try to show to be bigger than what they are and come off as knowing everything. And it's sad, because you do that, you miss out on a lot of opportunities. You miss out on opportunities to allow people to open up and be vulnerable and transparent themselves. And understanding that you're not there to judge. Like, you've gone through some shit. And you have a message that somebody else needs to hear and show that they can make it through it and that they're not alone. But too many of us are too worried about what people are going to think, what people are going to say, the judgment piece. And so for me, it's launching the podcast with Miriam and doing the Journey Beyond Divorce. Like, that's been huge, because it's really allowed me to open up and just be true to myself and show up and be there and just be authentic and be the real person. And so another thing that was spoken today was, don't ask for permission. Too many people are waiting and asking for permission from other people. Don't do that. One of the things that really resonated with me, that you have people that are married and they're waiting to get permission from their spouse. So you're not going to be true to yourself. You're not going to live your true life. And you're waiting for somebody else to tell you it's okay to go live your best life, to go after what you deserve. And you give up on your hopes and dreams because you don't get that permission. How does that make life something that you want to live? How do you go about to really fulfill your purpose on earth, to give value to others and help others win and succeed? And so, hey, what's up, Christopher? Thank you for that. I love that you're authentic and vulnerable, powerful. It truly is. Too many people are hiding, and we're in the society where we're driven on the validation of other people. I don't know why, but if you look and you really do a deep dive, sometimes it's from our past, and that's a little bit of what they talked about money situations too, and that's a topic that a lot of people don't like to talk about. But a lot of our issues when it comes to money is a past issue. And they actually resonated. They talked about this woman where she had grown up, and I don't recall exactly, but I think it was her and 6 siblings. And they were at a point where they would open up a can of beans and they would divvy up the beans between the siblings. And so the woman's like, I will never live that way ever. My family, when I have a family, will not live that way. And so there's going to be times where something happens and life takes place and it happens with money, you get scared or you get driven to not let it happen. And so it just depends on how you look at the situation, and you got to do the deep dive. There's an exercise. It's called the 7 levels of why. It's a very powerful thing that when you start really doing it, you go from your head to your heart. But it is scary because you're having to ask why, and it starts getting to the heart of the situation. Abundance or scarcity mindset for money. Patrick and I actually talked about that yesterday because you hear people talk about this abundance mindset, the scarcity mindset. He's like, let's change it up. Let's talk about the prosperity mindset or the poverty mindset. And it's one of those things that it's true. You got to look at it differently because we start hearing things over and over again and it starts getting washed out. So let's find different words to use. Let's shock people by using these different words and whatnot. But that was one big thing too that was very powerful, was talking about don't ask for permission. Show up, go live life, go get what you deserve. And it doesn't matter what people think. And that kind of goes in line with what I've talked about before, where if you're fearful of repelling the few, you're not going to attract the many. And I've gotten to the point now, and I tell people, I'm like, I would much rather have people tell me they hate me or they love me. No middle ground. So if there's people that want to sit down and send me a private message and say, I really hate what you talk about, I really dislike what you say, thank you. Or if you're like, I love what you're talking about, I love what you share, thank you. Either way, I'm not going to be attached emotionally to the results because I've got to live myself. I got to be true to myself, and I got to go after and give myself permission to do what I need to. People are going to follow. People will end up loving the mission or hating it. And so with 2 native sons, Patrick and I, real big on that one. It's finding people, attracting people, and here we go. And so that was one thing that stuck out a lot too, was the permission piece. And this was a quote from Brene Brown, and it was very powerful. It was she had talked about you either walk inside your story and own it, or you stand outside your story and hustle for your worthiness. Think about that. Own your story. Your story is who you are. That story is what's going to drive your business. Your story is what's going to not allow anybody else to steal what you're doing. Nobody can imitate your story. You got to share it and whatnot. And so they had a gentleman that came on, and he works with Adaptive Ops, and it was just mind-blowing information. He was talking about human trafficking and just the stats that are heartbreaking. And he actually talked about that you look at the growth of human trafficking, and it's exponential. And when it comes to the individuals that are trying to combat it, it doesn't grow like what the human trafficking does. It's a lower slope. And so it's a huge gap. And he actually talked about the fact that with local police authority, their hands are tied up. And so he was talking about that police might be on a scene and then get called to go rescue the mayor's dog. So that's the example that he gave. And they've got to answer that call. And just to hear the stories and to know that's going on, it's a sad thing. And so he talked about doing some contracts with Operation Underground Railroad. If you haven't heard of that organization, go check it out. His organization is Adaptive Ops, adaptiveops.com. But he was expressing that every day there's 3,000 missing person cases that are reported. And from those 3,000 a day, 50 people are never to be found ever again. And then he was bringing up the fact that with teenagers, when they run away from home, 1 out of 3 runaways will end up getting caught up in human trafficking within the first 48 hours. And then he said the other 2 out of the 3 very soon after for the runaways and whatnot. And he said the trouble that you run into is once they're caught, they're shot up with drugs. And so you can break the cycle of the human trafficking piece that they dealt with, but then you also have the backside of the drug withdrawal. And that's what kind of happens with individuals that are caught up in human trafficking. They can get out of it, but then they have the fallback because of the drug withdrawal. And he was talking that kind of sets it up where it's tough for the witness piece to take place, because one of the coping mechanisms is DID, disoriented individual disorder. I don't recall exactly, but they end up having 2 different personalities. And so one personality may not remember what's going on. And so they'll get up and become a witness and it flips. And then they lose that witness. So it was just, oh man, one of those shocking things to hear. And so I know if you're looking for organizations to donate to, that's one I would highly suggest looking into. Operation Underground Railroad or Adaptive Ops. They do they're in the same boat with combating human trafficking and whatnot. But kind of getting off in regards with the permission piece and giving yourself permission. Within the Boot and the Badass, there was a speech by, Lisa Nichols, I believe. And in here, she had talked about sometimes you have to stop asking for permission and instead just give the world notice. Tell the world, here I'm coming. I'm coming for it regardless if you want to give it to me or not. I don't care. Give notice. Give the world notice that unapologetic just showed up. Give the world notice that non-negotiable just showed up. Give the world notice that if they can't handle your light, you're no longer going to dim your light. Man, because when you become that bold, when you become that audacious, when you become that unapologetic, all of a sudden you become infectious. I've talked about this. You have these big goals, these big dreams, and it's a challenge. You attract people that want to solve that challenge. And so with Two Native Sons, that's what we're doing. I've talked about it. We're going to make a huge impact. And people be like, man, they talked about it. They saw it. They talked about it. It happened, and I didn't believe them. It's all good. And then in here, and when you get that and you operate with the knowing, all of a sudden you become contagious and people just want to be in your space and share your oxygen because you make them believe again. So what is your vision? And a little bit of the vision for Two Native Sons. It's helping individuals to live unapologetic. We've talked about this, but it's living unapologetic and going after your big dreams and having the creative process and just going and helping people to create a Zafuji lifestyle. And I've talked about that a little bit. And it's lifestyle of 0 fucks given. So that's where we're at. And one thing that is being really overlooked if you're trying to build a business, a very unique approach that people don't consider. It's very powerful. As I knock over the bottle. But if you're looking for different ways that a lot of people don't assume or believe is dead and whatnot, hey, reach out to me. I'll share that. Sorry about that. I'll share the information with you with this medium. That's very powerful and it's very unique. Well, not really unique, but it's powerful. It's something that a lot of people don't consider. And so if you like that information, send me a private message. Love to share it with you, help you out. So other than that, thank you guys for your time as my phone's vibrating. Thank you for you guys' time. Any aha moments that you took out of this, share it with us. If you have anything that you want to speak on, anything that's in your hearts, anything that you're driven and passionate about, and you just don't have anybody that you can lean into, reach out to Patrick and I. You can send us an email to twonativesons@gmail.com. So that's another avenue, or send us a private message on Facebook. So other than that, thank you guys for your time. Love you guys. Have a good night. Peace.